What's up, everybody? Brothers, sisters, psychonauts, and seekers of truth. It is Ananka, and welcome to my bazaar. Today, I have a Salvia chirp report for you. The title of this chirp report is Trapped in Two Dimensions, and was submitted to Erowid in 2021 by the user Sam. With all that being said, let our story begin. I smoked about a fifth gram of 5x salvia in a pipe. After about 5 minutes, after I had decided the salvia had no effect on me, my friends and I, the others had not smoked salvia and were acting as sitters, decided to smoke some weed. I took 2 very heavy hits from the pipe and disappeared. I could still see the others in the room, but the dimensions of the room had become grossly distorted. I thought that I was simply stoned from the weed, and so said nothing. Pretty soon, I started laughing to anything that was said, caused by the weed. However, this leads me to my first other world. I was hung upside down, with my head resting on an infinitely long conveyor belt. Everything was black, and the conveyor belt was just the outline of a conveyor belt. 2 white lines stretching off into nothingness. There was still a small window through which I could see the room and everything else. The conveyor belt was moving, and on it were bumps which were hitting my head at the rate of my heartbeat. My heartbeat had become incredibly loud, and everything, my breath, my laughter, was to its rhythm. Someone said something, and one of my friends and I both started laughing, the typical stoned laugh where I can't stop. I felt forced to laugh because the bumps on the conveyor belt that were forcing the laughs out of me. I looked at my friend and realized that he too must be hung over a conveyor belt in his imagination, and that he too was struggling to get out. Suddenly, I was off the conveyor belt and back to a full view of the room. Everything was in 2 dimensions. However, the distance meant nothing any longer. Everything looked huge, and I had no idea how long the room was. I lay back on the bed and felt my legs stretching outwards through infinity. At that point, the picture started to fragment. It looked as if I was looking at one of those walls of television screens, with each image showing the same thing. I think that the images were all still in 2 dimensions, but they were rapidly becoming too small to see. I kept zooming away from the wall of screens, which could either look concave and bending over me, or convex, like it would turn into a huge ball of images. It is difficult to say which. At this point, I finally realized that I was under the salvia. I felt as if it had trapped me within it. There was a roaring in my ears, and the wall of television screens started to go fuzzy and blur out. Out of this blur, a single small image of the real world, like a window on a computer screen, cleared up and I could see the room again. I managed to force out a call for help in a voice that was not my own. I was trapped inside the salvia, but I could control the body that was out in the real world enough to call out. I managed to get my friends to call 911 and to splash water over me. I could feel the water, but it wasn't happening to me. It was happening to that body that was still in the real world. I asked someone to rub my legs down. I can't remember if they did or not, as I could feel nothing. Suddenly, I could feel the cold air from the open window behind me hit me, and everything started to clear up. The room reverted back to 3 dimensions, and I lay back, panting. I started telling my friends what I had seen, but couldn't describe it. As I was speaking, however, I could feel myself slipping back in. The three-dimensional images started to slide over each other again, and reverting to the two-dimensional world. My mind was detached from this world, and I was seeing it all on a huge screen. On a screen. However, things look like they are in 3 dimensions, even though they are in 2. This really was 2 dimensions. Cardboard cutouts of people of impossible sizes overlapping each other. My location in space no longer made any sense either. I was just here. Everything else was a picture that moved as I moved. Place didn't mean anything anymore. My friends helped me up and moved me down to my room to wait for the police. I was able to walk, but only because I was walking in my own world. I controlled a huge body, detached from this 2-dimensional world that I could see about 3 feet away from me. Steps were easy. They were just a flat path on which I knew to put my feet between the lines. When the police came, my other buddy knew how to answer their questions. I couldn't tell them about the 2-dimensional world, or ask them how come 20 of them seemed to be able to fit in such a small room. There were only, I think, 3. I didn't tell them that I was shaking so much because I was scared and panicking, though I was obviously just shaking so much because of the drug. I couldn't believe that the whole world wasn't shaking to my shakes, which I could feel pulsing through my body. I knew how to behave, because I could see myself as others saw me. This wasn't quite an out-of-body experience. Rather, I was watching the imaginary me who would be there were he not trapped in Salvia. I could see him watching the real world as if on a screen, and answering the right questions. The next thing I knew, I was on a stretcher and inside an ambulance. Since place meant nothing to me, it wasn't really me that had moved, just the rest of the world. They put on an oxygen mask, and my mouth started to get really dry. Soon my mouth was the only thing in my body, and it felt like dry rock. There was just my mouth in the world, and the oxygen mask. I started imagining a rocky desert landscape around my mouth, and don't know now whether I really saw that, or just imagined it at that time, or whether there is a difference. I have no recollection of the trip from my house to the hospital, though I am certain I was conscious in my own way. I remember being lifted from my stretcher to the hospital bed, and then, all of a sudden, there was no one there. I lifted my head, and all I could see was the room. The room was still in 2 dimensions, but like a screen that is bent and waving. I realized that the present wasn't a time. It was a place. We were always in the present, and now I could actually feel myself in it. Places from far back and recently were identical, just different pictures that were scattered around. The room and the 4th-dimensional impossibility of time started to wrap themselves into a gigantic sphere, which looked silvery and liquid. Yet at the same time, I could see every detail of the room and time perfectly. My body I couldn't see, but I knew that it was silvery as well. I started to zoom out from this sphere until I was standing on it, standing on all of time and space. I didn't like the feeling, so I let myself slip back down until I was level with the sphere again. At this point, I started to slip away into dreams and visions that no longer had anything to do with reality. I only remember 2 clearly. I don't know if I had others. One was of a dragon, made up of colored points on a black infinite landscape. It looked similar to a 3D computer graphic of one, before all the points are connected up. The points at the bottom were red, which slowly changed to gold about halfway up its body, and finally ended in black. How I saw the black points against the completely black background, I don't remember. There was no emotion connected with this vision. I wasn't even there. I was simply watching it all from a distance. I snapped back into the hospital and saw my heartbeat acting crazy on the computer monitor next to me. Someone had stuck a tube in my arm, but I hadn't felt it. I was panting, and my heart felt like it wanted to explode from my chest. I heard someone say something about my heart being as it was from anxiety, and I couldn't agree with them more. I think I may have had an out-of-body experience at this point. Time was still as absurd as space. Both of them just wound back and forwards. I had no idea how long I had been there for, and the clock kept jumping around. My second dream vision involved me on a boat in a black landscape again. Black sky, black ground, and black river. Everything was peaceful, and I just felt myself slip away down this river. I snapped out again, knowing that it was far better to face this imprisonment and anxiety in the two-dimensional world than the peacefulness of that other world. I think I had other dreams like that. Blackness with me slipping away, and I kept forcing myself to snap out. One final vision that I only remember a fragment of came back to me when they were putting the wiring on my chest. I saw some type of machine man, all in red metal, with a number of tubes and wires that could be plugged into his head. The dream was obviously induced by my having wiring attached to my own chest. I came to at about 3 in the afternoon the next day. I had to keep touching and feeling things to check that I was back in this reality. The ease at which I could see things in 3 dimensions amazed me. I resolved, though I will probably not keep this resolution, to do a major on perception. Alright, everyone. That is the end of our story. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like, share, subscribe. Share with us your Salvia experiences down in the comments below. Check out the other videos and playlists on my channel, and I will see you in the next one, fam. Deuces.